Moza have released the FSR, their first wheel with a screen. But is it any good? Before we get into that though, a quick disclaimer, I am affiliated with Moza and Moza did send me this wheel for free for testing and review. However, you can be rest assured that none of that will affect the outcome of my opinion in this video, as Moza have no say or control of what happens in this video. My opinions, thoughts and findings are my own. But if you do end up wanting to buy the steering wheel, then please use my affiliate link down in the description below. Thank you.
Here they are, the elite, the cream of sim racing equipment. For the longest time, sim racing steering wheels that have LCD or LED screens are seen as the most desirable luxury when it comes to sim racing. And it's easy to see why. They look like spaceships. They have lots and lots of buttons on them. They have that ever so desirable screen. And in order to afford one of these, you probably might have to sell a kidney or two. And that's just the way it has been for many, many years. Until now. Welcome everybody to the Moza FSR. Once again, we rely on Moza to leave no stone unturned and provide literally everything that we want. Now, don't be fooled into thinking that this is just a Moza GS with a fancy screen on it, because it isn't. The size of the wheel has went down from 300mm to 280, a smaller and more appropriate size, reflecting their real-life counterparts. The grips are no longer Alcantara and are leather, meaning that you don't have to worry about wearing gloves for whenever you want to go racing. All of the dials are aluminium. The FSR even includes Moza's brand new data reading system with its new quick release, meaning that it will work with all of Moza's wheelbases, including the R5. And most obviously, it has that screen. It's just perfect. In fact, I would be very tempted to say that it's better than perfect. Perfect implies the best engineers have done the best job that they can using the best materials. But this just feels better than that. For starters, that screen. It's the thing we're all wanting to know about. It sits right in front of you and it is absolutely gorgeous. And don't forget, Moza are no stranger to making high quality, good looking screens, especially if you look at the other dash displays that they've made before this. It's very bright, there is no colour bleed whatsoever, and there's no fuzz at all. It's just a very nice, high quality screen. And it's not boring whatsoever. It is not boring. It's genuinely a nice piece of art to look at, really. And that's just the screen I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the wheel as a whole. The wheel as a whole should belong in a gallery, if anything. It's just stunning. With many other things on the wheel, it's business as usual. We've become accustomed to the usual backlit buttons that Moza provide, and here they are once again, so nothing new to report there. And as mentioned in the last review with the RSV2, the dials have got a more cushiony feel to them than they do on the GS wheel. Whenever you twist the dial on the GS wheel, it feels a lot more clicky, but on the FSR wheel, it feels a lot softer, more premium, as I would say. You still get your usual very bright, colourful LED bar that measures your rev count on the top of the wheel, and that is still fully customizable. And I do like the fact that they have kept some things pretty much the same, and they haven't tried to fiddle with it, because if it isn't broke, don't fix it, and if it's good, add it again. For example, the thumb encoders that the FSR wheel uses are still really nice and stiff, and you are not going to accidentally activate these things. Now, there are a few people that say that these thumb encoders are too stiff, and I couldn't disagree more. I think they're absolutely spot on. Just be aware that these thumb encoders are also buttons as well, so you can map these to something like an indicator if you really wanted. But as usual, as we've come to expect from Moza, all of the buttons are perfectly easy to reach. You don't have to take your hands off the wheel to reach most of the buttons, and it feels really comfortable in your hand. And coming back to the size of the steering wheel, as mentioned before, it's 280mm, which is the exact sweet spot, I would say, between the Moza GS and the Fanatec Formula V2, the GS being 300mm and the Formula V2 being 260mm. Now, I absolutely adore adored the GS wheel for its size because it is bigger, you feel more involved with the car that you're driving. But with the FSR, it is slightly smaller, and to be honest, it actually makes a lot more sense because the real-life wheels that you find in Le Mans hypercars and Formula 1 cars are smaller because the cockpit is tiny and you need a lot more room to move around in. Near enough perfectly.
But there is one innovation that triumphs above all of the innovations that Moza have put onto this wheel. It is not the screen, it is not the buttons, it is not the newly formed dials. It is a very simple yet very functional innovation that makes this wheel so accessible. Can you tell what it is? Well, I have the wheel right here, but nothing that you can see is what I'm talking about. We have to turn it to the back. Can you see it? So for the keen-eyed bunch of you, you'll have noticed this little port right here. This is a little port for a USB. Now what does that mean? What that means is that if you don't own a Moza direct drive wheelbase and you own something else, say for instance a Fanatec DD1 such as I have over there, you do not need to own a Moza DD base in order to use this wheel. So if you like this wheel and you have a Fanatec, this wheel is open to you to use. So what I'm going to be doing in an upcoming video is that I'm going to be taking this quick release off and I'm going to be replacing it with the Podium hub from Fanatec, and then we're going to be forming an alliance that we've only dreamed about. But this little port right here is the thing that we have been asking every sim racing wheel company to make that has their own ecosystem. Gomez and Cube Controls don't count because those steering wheels are made for every single wheelbase, but companies like Fanatec, Moza, SimMagic, sim racing companies that have their own ecosystem, this is revolutionary, and it's so simple. But at this moment in time we do not have the USB hub, so we will be coming back to this wheel for a part 2 just to test it out on other wheelbases.
So how much does this wheel cost then? Well, it's £580. Not cheap. Or is it not? Because what you have to take into consideration is the context of what this wheel is. You see, this kind of steering wheel isn't very common, and to get something of similar caliber to this wheel, you have to spend over £1,000 for something similar. If you go to companies like Cube Controls and Gomez, anything like this from anywhere else, you're looking to pay almost double. And paying almost double, you get pretty much exactly the same things as anywhere else. Is it a lot of money? Yes. But is it a lot for this steering wheel? No. And it should be mentioned that people have been begging Fanatec to make something very similar to this for years, and they have got nothing with a screen at all. If you were to put this wheel on Fanatec's website today, it wouldn't be the most expensive, but it would have the most stuff on it.
I have to say though, after using this wheel for a couple of weeks, this wheel feels so natural in my hands. It feels so comfortable, and that's despite the smaller size that I mentioned earlier. I thought the 300mm of the GS wheel would be the perfect sweet spot, but alas, 280mm feels just as comfortable. And I'm not getting any cramp in my hands at all like I did with the Formula V2, because that one is really small, so you have to grip it in a certain way, but with this one, not at all. And that thus leads me onto the displays. You can have whatever kind of display you want, really. Now, when I first found out that they were going to be making a steering wheel with a screen on it, I thought they were just going to copy and paste the displays that you normally get for the CM dashboard. I thought it was just going to be exactly the same as that, and all we're going to get is just a dashboard implemented into the steering wheel. Oh boy, how wrong was I. With the normal dashboard that I have here, you are limited to 9 displays. But with the FSR wheel, you get 15 displays for the screen on the wheel, and only 2 of those are shared with the regular dashboards. So that means you get 13 unique displays that have been specially designed for the FSR wheel. And all of them have a purpose, because you can decide whether you want a very complicated display, or you can have a super simplified one where it just shows you the gears. There's a screen entirely dedicated just to the life of your tyres. And not to mention you get a little graphic of a Formula 1 car on here. And not to mention, if you're the person that's using this wheel on a different wheelbase, for example Fanatec, then you still get access to all of those screens using the USB port on the back of the wheel. You still get access to all of that through the Moza Pithouse software. This is an absolutely wonderful wheel to use. It's comfortable, it looks really nice, it's really functional, and those leather grips just make it for me completely, because I'm so fed up of the suede Alcantara craze. Yes, it looks really nice for about 5 minutes, but after about a week's use, it's gonna look really grubby, as I shall now demonstrate with my Formula V2 and GS wheel.
This is the norm, unfortunately, with Alcantara and suede. So, it's a bargain. It's beautifully made, it's gorgeous to look at, and it's comfortable to use. Perfect steering wheel then? Well, as these videos normally go, no, I don't believe a perfect steering wheel actually exists. Even the GS wheel has some little issues, like the grips and that one odd dial. The V2 gives you hand cramp and the rotary encoders are very loose. That doesn't stop them from being good wheels though, and it's the same story with this one. So let's dive into the issues.
For starters, the way you change the screen on this thing to show another display is both confusing and weird. Now, you would normally think in order to change the screen it would be some sort of button that's near the screen where you would just press it and then it would move the screen along, or even you would think it was touch screen, you just press it and then it would shift it along. It isn't either of those things. What you have to do is you have to pull the right hand clutch paddle and hold it in, and then use the right hand thumbstick left or right to change the screen. That control is somewhat baffling to me, because if you're a person that likes to use a double clutch paddle module, well, to put it simply, you can't. You can either have the double clutch module or you can change the screen. You can't have both, because if you do that, when you pull the clutch in, it's going to activate the clutch. But while we're on the subject of the clutch paddles, there's a little bit of an issue.
Now, for the first time in one of these reviews, I'm going to be putting this slight issue down to this being defective and not what everyone else would be getting. So if there is anybody in the comment section that already owns this wheel and has this problem, please comment below, because I would love to hear what your guys' experience is. You see, the clutch paddle on my module has a very inconsistent and changing dead zone. Now, normally to fix an issue like this, you would go into the Moza pit house and calibrate all of the paddles with the software. I have done this 5 times already and it is exactly the same. So it isn't a software issue, it's a hardware issue. In fact, I shall demonstrate.
If you look on the bottom left, you'll see this blue line. That is my clutch. Now, for some reason, there's a massive dead zone with it. I am letting out the clutch here. There is a massive gap here, and it's really inconsistent, and I really do not like that. And this has got nothing to do with the calibration of it, because I've calibrated that clutch pedal 5 times and it's exactly the same. There is a huge dead zone with it. That, right there, the clutch is halfway out. And again, I've calibrated it many times.
But please take into account that this might be just a simple defect with my particular wheel. And again, if you are an owner of this wheel, please look to the comment section, find my pinned comment, and reply to that comment with your experience. Do you get this issue? Do you not? Let me know. Another aspect I don't like about this steering wheel, and it's once again down to its compatibility, because the screen on the wheel is not compatible with SimHub. Luckily, Moza have developed a good array and a good selection of screens, which does save this wheel. And it's a good job that they've done that, because that would have been a killer in my overall rating of this wheel. But the fact that the screens are still not compatible with SimHub does hurt this wheel quite a bit. And while we're on the subject of the screen, some of the things on it do need a bit more development. For example, the graphic that shows the tyre life and tyre temperatures. The graphic is an F1 car and only an F1 car. Now, this isn't a problem and will not affect your experience with the wheel, but it's a bit distracting when I'm driving a Assetto Corsa Competizione and I look to my tyre temperatures and I'm reminded, hey, this wheel is meant for a Formula 1 car. It would have been nice to see other car outlines being designed for the wheel. Also, depending on which sim you use, some of the information just will not show. For example, in Assetto Corsa, the ABS just doesn't show up, and depending on which car you use, it's the same story with the traction control. And if you're using something that has ERS, that doesn't show up at all in Assetto Corsa. For F1 2022 though, everything works just fine, but it does depend on the sim that you're using. And my final complaint is a rather small one, but it's something that you, the user, has to take into consideration. Because if you're a racer that likes to use VR and and only VR, this wheel is a bit pointless, and the screen itself is a bit pointless. Because if you're a sole VR user, you can't see it. So you might as well stick with the GS wheel. However, after giving it some extra thought, this isn't really a criticism of this wheel in particular, but the entire style of wheel as a whole. Meaning not just the Moza FSR, but any other wheel that has a screen. So this isn't a criticism of the FSR, it's just if you're a VR user, don't bother with this kind of wheel, no matter who it's from. Oh, one more thing. I can't believe I'm coming back to this. But you guys have done it again. Look, the engine map starts at 1, ends in 12. The traction control starts at 1, ends in 12. The ABS starts at 1, ends in 12. The turbo starts at 1, ends in 12. The ERS starts at 0 and ends in max. Why is this still a thing where there's the one odd button? Why? Why is that a thing? Now, all of those issues that I have brought up with the screen and the wheel itself, thankfully, none of them are hardware related. There's nothing wrong with the physical structure of the wheel whatsoever. All of the issues that I've brought up with the screen and that can be fixed using software updates. And that's totally fine by me. And not to mention, this is Moza we're talking about. They are absolutely insane with how many updates they can get out. In fact, as we are speaking, Moza has literally just dropped an update for the R9 and the FSR wheel, so we're going to see what that brings. But it's just crazy, as I'm recording this video, Moza have brought out an update. And it seems like I bring this up every other Moza review video that I do, but Moza do care about the feedback that they get, and they try their best to implement their upgrades and fixes to the equipment that they provide. And no doubt somebody at Moza is going to be watching this video and taking on board the feedback that we are giving them right now. So for the people at Moza watching this video, I do have some suggestions on going about improving this. Number 1, and it's about that F1 graphic. It feels a little weird using that as my basis, especially if I'm using a GT car or something completely different. My suggestion is developing some kind of software where either the Moza Pithouse software or the wheel itself can detect what sim is booting up. So Assetto Corsa Competizione or iRacing, but it also can detect what kind of car you are using. Now, I'm not saying there needs to be a graphic for every single car model on the planet, but what I am saying is that if you're using a Formula 1 car, you've got the obvious Formula 1 graphic. If you're using a Le Mans hypercar, then it'll change that to roughly draw out the shape of a Le Mans hypercar, and so on and so forth with like GT cars and such. You know, have it as like a BMW. It's just a little distracting having to use the Formula 1 car as the graphic, especially if I'm driving like an Audi R8 GT3 car. But the biggest thing I'm going to suggest, and it's something that we've all been wanting forever and ever, but for the 1000th time, can we please have this little screen and all dash displays compatible with softwares like SimHub? Especially when it comes to the RS and the CM dashboard, you only get 9 displays. It is extremely limiting, insisting that everybody uses the Moza Pithouse software when there is other options available. Make these displays and the FSR wheel compatible with SimHub, please. It is really, really essential because I can't recommend the dash displays. I have never recommended the CM dash display, which I have here, or the RS dash display. And the biggest reason is because they are not compatible with softwares like SimHub. It is a really important matter to consider. Don't limit us. Your software is great, but we just want more freedom. Make the customer happy, because happy customers are also returning customers. And lastly, it's just general compatibility and bug fixes with the sim and the software. Because on some occasions in games like iRacing and Assetto Corsa, there have been some cars where I've had the ABS on in the game, but it doesn't register that I've got it on my screen. It just says a big fat note. But other than those little things, this wheel gets a thumbs up from me. In conclusion, this is my new favourite steering wheel. And that's all I need to say really to emphasize how good this wheel is. While I can't recommend it for VR users, everybody else would be mad not to go for this wheel. And the most amazing thing about it is just how much it costs, especially when you take into consideration the other wheels that are in this field. And it shines a light on the ridiculous prices that other companies charge. Now, I'm not saying that those other wheels are bad, I'm just saying they're expensive. And the Moza FSR has me questioning why.
are they really worth double the price? I would recommend the FSR to anybody who wants to get that close immersion with racing, because it's just outstanding. Now, I will be making a part 2 on this steering wheel, because Moza are currently developing the USB hub and dedicated adapters to whether you're a SimuCube or Fanatec user. But those modules are not available just yet, and you will have to purchase those separately. So we are going to be coming back to test those. Anyway guys, if you have enjoyed this review, then please do consider hitting the like button, and if you're new here and you want more gear reviews like this one, then please do consider subscribing. Once again, we are affiliated with Moza, so if you are considering buying anything Moza, then please do use my affiliate link down in the description below, because I get compensated for that and it tells Moza that you guys are enjoying these reviews. But as always, thank you so much for watching, and I shall see you guys in the next review. Have a good night, everybody.